Tonight, I'm going to talk about why you would do a business plan. I understand from your professor that each of you has a unit, a project that you're doing, but you're all a part, let's say for discussion purposes for tonight, that you're all a part of one company. And your president over here actually thinks you're quite talented and that he can make a lot of money from the projects you have going. Okay, maybe it's fantasy, I see the smiles on your face, but we'll pretend tonight, okay? He wants money. Well, where does he go? And I think he's talked to you a little bit about this, but I had another life before I became an academic. I worked in construction very early on. No, I didn't dig the ditches. I was in the office. I worked for a Square D company, an electrical equipment manufacturer. And I worked for an investment banker, Wheat First Securities, in Richmond, Virginia, which is now a part of one of the large banks. I just don't remember which one anymore. And I worked for Wachovia Bank in their private banking area, high income, high net worth. That's where I got involved with entrepreneurs because I was banker to these guys who, and I'm saying guys, there were a few women, but very few, who had made a lot of money. And I found it very interesting. You know, some people go out and they have really successful businesses, others go out and they do not. So that's how I got involved in entrepreneurship in the first place, because they would come to me for financing. I was not a corporate banker. I was not a small business banker. I was a private banker to the individual. But what you find is if you have a startup business, you're not going to go down to the bank to your handy-dandy loan officer and hand him or her a business plan and get your money. You're too risky. You don't have any history for me to check. So you're going to have to find your money in a lot of different ways. I did tell John that I would tell you a little bit tonight about where you're going to get your money, from the least likely to the most likely. The largest amount of money that goes out, largest number of dollars, comes from venture capitalists. Most of you will never go to a venture capitalist. They don't invest in early stage companies. They want you to already have equity in the company yourself. And incidentally, I'll get these notes and you can have them if you want to take them. I'd rather talk to you than have you writing everything down unless you really need it. They will invest in companies that are high risk, at least to you, but they have a lot of hurdles that they make a company go through before they ever commit to giving the money. However, they are willing to invest lots of money. They only are looking at companies that have a potential for very high returns. Your small entities would not attract them. However, if the larger company that your professor is running has a lot of potential, then they're willing to invest. One of the issues that goes along, though, with having a venture capitalist invest in your company is that they expect to have some control over it. And in many cases, they expect to have a lot of control over it. So while you may get a lot of money from them, you're also going to give up a lot of your autonomy. So there's always an exchange when you're dealing with venture capitalists. They tend to specialize in certain industries, so just because you find the name of one and can get in to see him, which is unlikely, but if you could get in to see one, it may be that that venture capitalist specializes in another industry altogether. So I'm not going to spend much time for it, but they want your venture to have about 5 years of experience already. Or now if you're Steven Spielberg or Steve Jobs or one of those guys, I dare say that Bill Gates could get venture capital just on his name, you know. But for most of us, they want you to already have a track record, not be a startup. They want you to be generating revenues, and these are just some numbers that I pulled out about 3 years ago. I haven't taught in that area since Katrina, because I ended up being an administrator pulling things back together. But about 3 or 4 years ago, these are the numbers. They want you to generate about $10 million a year in revenue. I hope all of you are have projects that are generating that kind of money. They want you to grow by at least 20% a year and have a pre-tax profit margin of at least 15%. And I'm sure we'll all fit into that one day. However, as I said, you're going to have to worry about how much control they get in exchange for the amount of money they give you. Some venture capitalists want to be involved in almost daily operations. You definitely don't want that. Or maybe you do. Sometimes you're really good, you have a good skill, you have a great technology that you're working on, but you really don't know much about management. So you want to work together with a venture capitalist. Other times you know what you're doing and you just don't want somebody else meddling. But if I'm giving you $1 million, I want to have some control over how you spend that $1 million. So my advice to you early on with your small business is don't go looking for venture capitalists. There are people called business angels. These are individuals who like to invest in startup businesses. They know that the failure rates for startup is very high. Over half of them fail. And there are a variety of reasons for that. Some of them aren't so bad. Sometimes people go into business and think that this is going to be fun and find out that it's working all day, every day, and being very responsible, and they choose to close these businesses. When we're doing research on how many businesses fail, we really look at how many businesses continue from year to year. So if a business disappears, it's looked at as a failure. It may have been a decision by the owner to not do that anymore, okay? I just don't want to be an entrepreneur. It may be that that business has been bought out by another company or has merged with another company. So it's really hard to get those kinds of figures. But the investors, the business angels, are willing to invest in some smaller firms. Typically what you get are groups of doctors or dentists or lawyers or people who have extra money around to invest. And even though new ventures are high risk, when one hits, I mean, the chances of making a lot of money is really good. So there you go. Now, that's just the introduction, because those are the areas you hear about these people on TV, and you can find lists of venture capitalist names. There are books that are printed with those people. But most of us don't really start businesses that way. We started with something called Bootstrap financing, and that really is, I think, descriptive. Our personal savings. Most of you have enough personal savings to start your business? Me either. Okay. I always let my students pretend. I would give them $20,000 to start. Okay, let's pretend you have $20,000 in savings. Now go on. And one of the first things they found is that $20,000 isn't a lot of money when you're trying to start up a business. By the time you do rent and utilities and whatever changes you have to make in the building and whatever you have to buy product-wise to get started, and then there's marketing, my goodness, that's expensive. So they found that that $20,000 that I was such an angel to invest in their companies didn't go very far. And so they had to look for other places to find money. Please, maybe we should turn the camera off. Not really. I don't recommend that you do this, but many people do. They use credit cards. It gives them a way of handling cash flow problems. If you're making a product, you've got to pay up front for all your materials, and then you've got to make what you're making, then you've got to bill the customer, and then you've got to give the customer 30 days to pay. So there's a long time from the money that you put in until you collect. So there's a cash flow problem. You have money out, but you don't have money in yet. And one way that some people use is credit cards to carry them through. Now, I don't recommend it because the interest rate on credit cards is astronomical. It is a really poor way to finance business. But in reality, I mean, we all know what the books say, but in reality, a lot of people do use credit cards. And for many years, they used personal credit cards, but now there are small business credit cards that are available, so some of them have those. But I just want to make sure, even though it's on film, I'm not recommending that. Second mortgages have been a way, equity loans. A lot of people who own homes go in, and it's usually your largest asset, And so you're able to get more money because you've been paying on your home, particularly if you've owned it for a few years. So that is a way to pull out money to get started. One of the problems with that is your wife or husband, whoever, may not be very happy if in fact you start your business and you use the equity in the house to get it going, and it is not a successful business. Then we got real problems at home. So think carefully before you do it, and make sure that you got cooperation there. Sometimes you can get extended terms from suppliers. If you're making a product and you know you're not going to be able to sell this product until 3 months down the road, sometimes you can get extended terms from suppliers. Usually you aren't able to do that unless you have a prior relationship with them. If I've worked with Home Depot for many years and I've worked with suppliers to that company, and I decide to go out and start a business of my own, I may be able to take that relationship that I have had with Home Depot with me and have those suppliers work with me and give me extended terms. That's actually what happened to Bernie Marcus, who is one of the founders of Home Depot. He had been working with Handy Dan, a company we don't hear anything about anymore. It was a part of Dalen Company, I think. But he had been working with that company, and he had built relationships with the suppliers there. So after he was fired from Handy Dan and went on to start up Home Depot, he was able to get extended terms, but that's because he already had a relationship. Another thing you find is that when you're starting up a business, you really need some kind of experience. Experience in the industry, experience with the particular type of company that you're running. It may even be an avocation, something that's a hobby that you're turning into a business. But you really need some understanding of the industry itself before you go out there and get started. Most of you aren't going to leave here and become entrepreneurs on day one. You really will need a job because your parents will push you for that. You know, they kind of like it when you go out. I'm sure you'll help them with that, right? Every one of them. Okay. And I do think you're marketable out here. But you can do that. But finally, the last form of bootstrap capital, and the one you're most likely to use, is money from family and friends. It can be very good. It can be just excellent because Uncle Bill is really going to love you if you go out and start up a new Xerox or a new Home Depot or a new Microsoft. On the other hand, Uncle Bill is not going to like you at all if you go out and start up a clunker. And we know the failure rate, so your chances are about 50-50 no matter what you do. So think very carefully before you get money from family and friends. Which leads me, I love these things that segue nicely, which leads me into the discussion of business plans, which is why I'm really here tonight. If you're going to your family for money, and particularly if you're younger, you have to show them that you're really serious about what you're doing. A business plan isn't just something that you take to a venture capitalist. If you have a business plan and you can go into your Uncle Bill and you can say, I want to start a business, this is what I want to do, this is how I will market it, this is how I will produce the product or deliver the service. This is the management team. These are the people who are going to be working with me. This is what I think the mission of the company ought to be. This is how I'm limiting what we will do. And this is what I think I will need financially for 3 years. Usually you want to have 3 years of financials. I realize this may not be for your project here, but in a business plan, we used to have 5 years. It seemed really good, but let's face it, after a couple of years it's all fantasy and it's silly to have that. But you want to plan for about 3 years. And it's good if all that works out. The chances of you being exactly on target are slim and none. It's very unlikely that you will hit it right on the head. But the business plan gives you respectability with the family. I mean, they've known you since you were, you were a little girl over there. I knew you when you were in diapers. You're so cute, kind of thing. It's hard for Uncle Bill to handle the fact that you have matured, that you are an adult, and that you really want to start a business, and you have the intelligence and experience to do that. Coming into him with a completed business plan shows your knowledge. It demonstrates to him your awareness, your understanding of what you're doing, and it really increases your likelihood of getting funding from him. So that's one thing you want to do with the business plan. And wherever you go for money, it looks good. And that's why I told your professor, why I suggested that you use this. You're going to forget everything you learn in this class. You're going to go out and you're going to be working and having fun and living life, and the next thing you know, you get married, you have children, you have a mortgage, which you can borrow against to start up your new business. But anyway, life happens and you will forget all the particular things. But this is a business plan you can buy from Amazon.com. There are others. It doesn't have to be this one, but this one I think is particularly user-friendly. But you can go to Amazon.com and buy this for a reasonable amount of money. I look like an advertisement for Business Plan Pro, but I'm not. You can buy it for a reasonable amount of money, and you can sit down and go through and do your own business plan long after you're gone from here. So part of your doing this is making you aware of what's out there on the market for people who are not college students, because you may not start a business right away, but you may want to start a business in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years down the road. You really don't know. But that lets you know up front here, this is user-friendly, and this is the kind of software that the average guy uses when he or she decides to start a business. Once you've built your business plan, it's got your marketing plan, production, it's got your financials in there, which you will suffer over mightily and have to guess about a lot. But you want all of that to be as realistic as possible. There is one area in there you really have to think about. There are always going to be some potential risks. When you're doing your business plan, you need to put those in there. You don't say, well, there's a risk that I'm going to lose my shirt here. It's kind of hard to get Uncle Bill to put money in if you tell him right up front that. But you would at least need to say, this industry, and I'm talking about the music industry right now, is an industry in flux. It is changing every single day. So while there are industries out there that seem to be fairly stable at the moment, and many industries go through this, they go through periods of stability and then have periods of great change. With the technology changes that are occurring in the music industry, you're at a time when there is a lot of change. So you have to, if you're trying to get money, you have to admit and make sure that everybody understands that you're aware of that. It's not to make you look weak or to make your deal look like a bad one. You need for the individuals that you're going to know that you are aware of potential pitfalls in your plan. So, hey, you just come off looking smart when you acknowledge that there are difficulties or potential difficulties with what you do. So all of it isn't just blowing smoke and making Uncle Bill and Aunt Sally really happy because you got a pretty business plan that can't fail. Any of them can fail under the right circumstances. But what else do you do with the business plan? Well, let's say that you did your business plan and you got some money to start up. You go out there, you put out your shingle, and you go to it. It's great, okay? We're having a lot of fun. Things are going well. I'm selling my products. Oops, I could sell some more, but I don't have some more. Okay, I've got a problem over here in production. I wasn't producing enough. I didn't know how high the demand would be. I planned, and this is where you go back to your plan, I planned to sell this many units every month, but no, there's a bigger demand. So you go back and you compare what's happening, the real the reality of your business to what you had planned on. And it lets you know there's tremendous discrepancies here. This wasn't a good plan on my part. Or what you may find, and this is more likely, is that, you know, the demand is there and that's really great and I need to make some more products, but oops, I don't have the money. I have a cash flow problem. I don't have the money to go out there and invest to build more products. That's when you go back to Uncle Bill or Aunt Sally, or if you've gotten all their money, you go home to Dad and say, listen, I'm a victim of my own success. I don't have enough cash flow here. I need more investment. So these kind of things are the reality that you'll deal with. You will go back to that business plan and you'll compare, you know, how am I doing as compared to what I thought I was going to be doing? The money, does it make sense? Am I making as much money as I thought? Am I making more than I thought? And that does happen, although I don't, it doesn't always. But it's a benchmark for you as you're growing your company. It's also a basis for doing next year's planning. What I really teach, I teach strategy and I teach entrepreneurship, but what I really teach is planning. A plan is never perfect. It has to be flexible. I mean, we'll put down all the numbers and we'll put down what we're going to produce and how we're going to market and so forth. But it's never, or rarely ever, I never say never because I always get caught in that. It is a very unusual thing for life to be exactly like the way that you planned it. I mean, we know that from our personal lives. And so what we'll do is we'll go back at the end of the first year. I've either done better than I planned, I've done worse than I planned, or I've done different than I planned. Sometimes what happens is you go into business and you're going to do, I have students who have left here and who've gone into business. I had one student who was going into business. He was doing some work with flooring. He was putting in coating. This is a good area with all the restaurants and food service places that we have. Putting in coatings on commercial floors that were non-slip, that would keep restaurant personnel and people who are working in kitchens and places like that, keep from having accidents in there. Anyway, it was a good product, and he did pretty well with that. He's a born entrepreneur, though. He keeps his eyes open all the time. And so while he did that, he also got into doing some flooring, some laying tile, and he says, oh, you know, Dr. J, that's not too hard. Well, he also got married, and he had a baby, and then he had another baby, and somewhere along the line, Katrina happened, and his skills were in demand, and he found that just doing flooring wasn't enough, and pretty soon he was buying older houses that had been flooded and rehabbing them, and turns out he has a real talent for that. He has a real talent for organization. He doesn't do all of the work himself because it's very difficult to find somebody who can do the drywall and the flooring and the roofing and the plumbing and the wiring. So he subs out the different parts of it. But he's doing very well, and he continues to have more babies. I told him, I said, Ron, you know, at some point here, you're either going to have to keep growing this business a lot, or... But if you stop and look at it, his business plan was for doing that coating on floors. And he is in a totally different business now. He's rehabbing houses. A business plan allows you to look back and say, yes, this is what I wanted to do, and I'm really sorry that I've gone so far afield. Or, yes, this is what I thought I wanted to do, but life has happened to me. And I find that there are real opportunities, and so I'm going to stick to the rehab maybe for the next 10 years. It will be a long time before New Orleans is up to snuff again, shall we say. So the rehab opportunities are big. It wasn't what he started out to do. You're not going to do the things that you have a project here about. But what happens is, in working through and building business plans, you learn how it's done, you learn the different things that you have to look at. By having to have a production plan and a marketing plan and a finance plan, all the different things, and looking at your management team. By going through all that and learning how to do it, you can apply it later. You can apply it to the floor coatings business, or you can apply it to rehab construction. He learned to do that in my entrepreneurship class. And now he has a strong banking relationship. You know, he's been very successful. And so he has his business plan that he gives to the bank and that kind of thing. It's a skill that you carry with you. So even though it's aggravating sometimes, I strongly encourage you, because you never know when you'll really want to have your own business. Some of you are going to be independent contractors, I know, but you never know what the future holds for you, which is what happened to my student. Hurricane Katrina came to town and life turned upside down for him and for many other people, and so he was able to seize that opportunity. He goes to the bank with his business plan. He uses it. He said, you know, Dr. J, I was really surprised. I really do what you said. I go back and I check it against what's really happening. I mean, the students are frequently confused and they think that, oh, you know, I got to get this class checked off and I'll go on and do what I'm really going to do in the real world. And sure enough, they find that they have a good background for it and that these things that they've been taught in classes actually work. So that's a little bit about business plans. The other thing I wanted to talk to you tonight about is, I know you're going to do some discussions of your ideas at the end of class here. It's really good and important for you to do this. This is a setting where nobody's out to get you, and you know, it's not a ruthless situation. It's a place where you can contribute ideas to each other. And students sometimes don't want to say, well, I see a problem with that. What are you going to do about this, or what are you going to do about that? Because you don't want to make the other group look bad, because you don't want them to make you look bad when it's your turn to discuss your area, right? Even vaguely familiar to you? I think it's really important that you offer suggestions to each other, because you never know where the good ideas are coming from. You have to be open to them, and I think that all of you, you're pretty smart. I mean, you've reached this point in your careers. The people who couldn't do it dropped out, or were let out. The people who didn't want to do it went away. So you're the people who've had the discipline to stick with everything. You're here now and you're coming to the end of your college careers. You're the cream of the crop. And you're going to go out there and make a difference. So I know about business planning and I know about banking. You have questions?
How do you go to a bank and ask them for money? What's the limit of bank?
You can ask for millions of dollars if you have 4 things. Let's make sure I remember them all. Character, okay. You've lived in the community a long period of time. People know you, that kind of thing. We're looking to see, you know, if you're a convicted felon, your chances of getting bank money are a little less. If you have good credit, if you come to me and you want to borrow money, I'm going to run a credit report on you and see, do you pay your bills or not? Have you just declared bankruptcy? If you've declared bankruptcy, I'm not going to give you any money for at least 7 years. That doesn't go off your credit report for 7 years. So do you have good credit? Character, credit, collateral, and this is where I find that young people are at a disadvantage. I'm going to want something in return. It's like buying a car. When you go and buy a car, they'll finance your car, because if you don't pay, they're going to go back and get the car. But as a banker, I'm not going to use sheep as collateral, although I did once finance a herd of beef. It was all right. It was fine. The guy was an investment banker, and I was more than happy to finance his herd because I used his stock as collateral for that loan. So if his cows had died on the hoof, you know, I was going to cash in his stock. We want you to have something. If you come to a bank for money, they want you to have something. Now, if you have a trust fund, I will certainly entertain that. If you own a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, one of my customers owned 2 seats on the exchange, I will finance that, although it will take me a little while to figure out how much one of the seats on the stock exchange is worth. It's more likely that you'll have a car, or that you'll have a home, or something like that that you'll use as collateral. And what that means is if you don't pay back the loan, I can go and seize whatever you have pledged. I did have to do a margin call once. I had a customer who worked with a very large insuring company, and his stock was collateral for his letter of credit to them. And the market crashed, and I had to go in and explain to him that the worth of his stock was not equal to what he had to maintain for that loan, and he had to give me more. Actually, I took his personal life insurance, but that's a life of a banker and why I became an academic. Okay, you know. So as bankers, we don't like to finance restaurants. If you're the Brennans, if you're a group that's had long experience in that area, and you can show a track record, I may be willing to talk to you about that. But restaurants tend to be stylish, cyclical. You know, we like Vietnamese food this year, and the next year we like that great paninis. I had paninis for lunch. Great, they're really hot right now. So they're kind of stylish in a way. So that's one thing, and they go under very quickly. The other thing we don't finance is livestock or anything that has to be fed. Because even, well, it's true. If I take back your herd of cattle, I've got to find a place to keep them. I've got to feed them. I mean, you know, it's a while before I sell them. I'm losing money on that deal. So you'll find there are some things that bankers just don't want to do. Okay, we got credit, character, collateral, and I can't remember the other thing. But if I think of it while I'm answering questions, I will.
So basically, you like to invest in capital that doesn't depreciate. That's pretty much what you're. If you're using the investment itself as the collateral.
Yeah. I want something solid that I can take, and typically that I can get rid of quickly. If you pledge stock or bonds against a loan, you sign a power of attorney over to the bank so that if a loan comes due and you don't pay it, I can go ahead and negotiate your securities. Yes?
So what would you suggest for a musical artist who may be just as trendy as a restaurant? Like, I mean, the Grammys were the other day. Let's use Amy Winehouse as an example. You know, her whole boat might sink tomorrow if she goes back to rehab and actually stays there.
Yes.
So if that whole trend falls through, what would you, like, if she were to come to you and say she wanted another loan or something like that, wanted you to invest before she comes out with another album, what would you say as far as that goes? Because it's not something that, you know, there's no real collateral that you can use that's like finite, concrete.
Okay. As a banker, with her coming to me as an individual, I wouldn't touch her. Okay. I mean, and I'm giving you that answer. I'm no longer a banker. I'm giving you that answer as what I think is typical. On the other hand, you have someone here who really knows his stuff about the music industry. There are lots of places I would assume that Amy Winehouse could go for that. Yeah, I think that's. But as a banker, I'm not going to look at it that way. I will look at a company that she has signed with. You know, I'll have relationships with them, but as an individual, I'd have a problem.